I've not seen her picture before. I'll be sitting here waiting for the...
I'm leaving, Daniel. I came here to be with you, but I want answers.
I'm thinking this is a...
What if the person who broke your trust never actually stopped lying, he just got better at hiding it? Because that's exactly what happened to Lisa. And the scariest part? She forgave him. If you're into real stories that expose the truth behind relationships, hit subscribe now, because what you're about to hear isn't just drama, it's a psychological unraveling. At first, nothing about Lisa and Daniel looked unusual. From the outside, they were one of those couples people quietly envied. They laughed easily. They moved in sync. There was a rhythm between them that felt practiced, almost effortless. Friends would say they were solid, the kind of couple that had already survived the hard parts. But that word, solid, can be dangerously misleading. Because sometimes, what looks like stability, is actually silence. And silence hides everything.
The shift didn't happen overnight. It never does. There wasn't a single explosive moment, no dramatic confrontation that shattered everything in one go. Instead, it started small. Almost invisible, a delayed reply, a slightly colder tone, a distraction that didn't used to be there. Lisa noticed it before she understood it. That subtle gut feeling, the kind you can't prove but can't ignore either. At first, she dismissed it. Everyone has off days, right? Everyone gets tired, distant, preoccupied. But Daniel's distance didn't feel random. It felt selective. He was still present, but only in fragments. Conversations felt shorter, eye contact lingered less, and when Lisa tried to lean in emotionally, Daniel leaned away, just enough to make her question herself. That's where the real damage begins. Not with betrayal, but with confusion. Because confusion forces you to doubt your own reality. So Lisa adjusted. She told herself she was overthinking. She gave him space. She became more patient, more understanding, more careful with her words. She started managing his moods like it was her responsibility. And Daniel let her. Weeks passed like this, and something quietly shifted in their dynamic. Lisa stopped asking certain questions. She stopped pushing for clarity. She started choosing peace over truth. And that's when Daniel made his move. It came out casually, too casually. There had been another woman. Not, is, but, was. Past tense. That was the key detail Daniel leaned on. He framed it like a mistake that had already been resolved, something that no longer mattered. He didn't confess under pressure. He revealed it like it was just another chapter, already closed. And Lisa froze, not because she didn't expect something like this, but because of how he said it. There was no urgency, no guilt, no visible weight behind his words. Just information, and that's when her mind split in two. One part of her reacted emotionally, the hurt, the betrayal, the shock. But the other part, the quieter, more strategic part, started analyzing. Why now? Why like this? And more importantly, what isn't he saying? Daniel controlled the narrative from the start. He kept the details vague. He didn't deny the existence of the other woman, but he minimized everything else. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. It just happened. Those phrases are powerful, not because they explain anything, but because they shut down further questions. Lisa felt the urge to dig deeper, to demand clarity, to piece together the timeline. But every time she moved in that direction, Daniel subtly redirected the conversation. He shifted focus to how he felt now. He emphasized that he chose Lisa. He framed his honesty as proof of growth. And slowly, without realizing it, Lisa stopped investigating and started rationalizing. This is where forgiveness entered the picture. But it wasn't the kind of forgiveness people imagine. It wasn't healing, it was survival. Because facing the full truth would have required Lisa to confront something much bigger than the betrayal itself. It would mean accepting that the relationship she believed in might not exist anymore. So she chose a version of reality she could live with. She forgave him. At least, that's what it looked like. On the surface, things began to normalize again. Conversations returned. The tension faded. They laughed like they used to. They rebuilt routines. From the outside, it seemed like they had overcome something difficult together. But underneath that surface, something critical had changed. Trust wasn't rebuilt, it was replaced. replaced with monitoring, with quiet observation, with emotional distance disguised as calmness. Lisa didn't trust Daniel again. She just stopped expecting the truth. And that's a completely different kind of relationship. Time passed, and Daniel grew more comfortable. The tension he once managed so carefully began to disappear. He relaxed. He assumed the worst was behind them. But he misunderstood something fundamental. Forgiveness doesn't erase memory, and it definitely doesn't restore trust. It just delays consequences. Lisa started noticing new patterns. Not obvious ones. Nothing that could be easily pointed out or proven. But familiar enough to trigger that same feeling she had before. That quiet instinct. That internal alarm. And this time, she didn't ignore it. But she also didn't confront him. Because she had learned something important. Confrontation doesn't always reveal truth. Sometimes, it just reveals how good someone is at lying. So Lisa watched. She paid attention to the inconsistencies. The timing. The small shifts in behavior that didn't align with Daniel's words. She stopped reacting emotionally and started observing strategically. And what she found wasn't another woman. Not exactly. It was something worse. Daniel hadn't just lied about the past. He had redefined reality. He wasn't operating within the same understanding of the relationship as Lisa anymore. Where Lisa saw commitment, Daniel saw flexibility. Where Lisa saw boundaries, Daniel saw options. The lie about the other woman wasn't an isolated mistake. It was a glimpse into how Daniel actually thought. And that realization changed everything. Because you can forgive an action. But how do you forgive a mindset? Lisa began to understand that the betrayal wasn't just about what Daniel did. It was about how easily he justified it. How calmly he presented it. How effectively he reshaped the narrative to protect himself. And suddenly, all the pieces started to connect. The distance before the confession. The timing of his honesty. The way he controlled the conversation. None of it was accidental. It was calculated, not in a villainous, obvious way, but in a subtle, self-preserving way. Daniel didn't see himself as the bad guy. And that made it even more dangerous. Because people who don't see their own behavior as wrong don't change, they adapt. And Daniel had adapted perfectly. He learned what to say, when to say it, how much to reveal, just enough to appear honest, but never enough to lose control. Lisa realized she had forgiven a version of Daniel that didn't actually exist. A version that was remorseful, self-aware, and committed to change. But the real Daniel, he was still playing the same game, just more carefully. And here's where the biggest twist unfolds. It wasn't Daniel's ongoing behavior that finally broke the relationship. It was Lisa's silence. Because silence, when used intentionally, becomes power. Lisa stopped seeking validation. She stopped needing explanations. She stopped trying to fix something that was never fully hers to fix. And in doing that, she changed the dynamic completely. Daniel felt it. That subtle shift. The emotional distance that couldn't be explained. The lack of reaction where there used to be concern. The calmness that didn't match the situation. And for the first time, he lost control. Because the entire relationship had been built on one unspoken foundation. Lisa reacting, Lisa questioning, Lisa forgiving, Lisa staying. But now, Lisa was none of those things. She wasn't angry. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't even confrontational. She was done. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a quiet, irreversible way. And that's the kind of ending most people never see coming. Because it doesn't explode. It fades. Slowly. Silently. Until one day, there's nothing left to hold on to. Daniel tried to fix it then. Of course he did. When the control slipped, when the pattern broke, when Lisa no longer responded the way he expected, he finally felt the consequences. He offered clarity. He offered reassurance. He offered the very honesty Lisa had been asking for all along. But timing matters. And sometimes, honesty comes too late. Because trust isn't just about truth. It's about consistency. It's about alignment between words and actions. And once that alignment is broken long enough, it doesn't matter what you say anymore. Lisa didn't leave because of another woman. She didn't leave because of one lie. She left because she finally understood something most people realize too late. Trust doesn't die in one moment. It dies in layers. And by the time you notice it's gone, there's nothing left to rebuild. So here's the question that lingers long after their story ends. If someone breaks your trust, and you forgive them, But deep down, you never feel safe again. Did you actually save the relationship? Or did you just delay its ending?
What do you think? Comment below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.